Hey everyone, Sunil Sebastian from Sebastian Fitness Solutions, and as you probably guessed by now, you know what this video is about, or rather who it's about specifically. And for the most part, before we start, I just want to make it very clear that the title isn't really 100% accurate. In fact, I didn't come up with it. It was actually the idea of one of my friends who thought it would be really cool and catchy. And if I were to title this, I would say a better way to do it would be to say that why Ian McCarthy is not a man of science. And I'm going to give you all precisely the reason why, along with clear documented proof. Now, for those of you who don't know Ian, he runs a fairly popular channel on YouTube called as Lifting for Life. And he basically made a name for himself by calling out these other bro scientists on YouTube and bashing their, whatever they call as, advice. As much as this video appears to be something that's sort of a karma is a bitch kind of a thing that's coming back to him after all his callouts, it really isn't that. In fact, I wasn't even going to make this information public. And I just kept it to myself in case he decided to call me as an attacker attacking him or his channel. But the truth is that despite his attitude and approach, I pretty much had a certain level of respect for this guy. You know, for the most part, he would give out scientifically accurate information, and it was really a breath of fresh air compared to all the garbage that's out on YouTube. But this incident that I'm about to share with you completely changed my perspective about him, and it made me realize that in many ways, he is just as much a bro as all these guys he is so cockily and confidently calling out. So here we go. So I'll be reading off these sheets, which include screenshots of my conversation with Ian. And as I read through each comment, I'll also edit it into the video so you guys can read it as well. But at the same time, I'll also link each of these screenshots into the description so you guys can check it out separately as well, if you'd like. And basically, this conversation took place back in July this year. And I know some of you are wondering, why did it take so long to come out with this? Well, like I've said before, and like I've said again and again on my channel, that despite how tempting it is to get into this whole nonsensical arguments and debates on YouTube to get more attention and get more subscribers, I'd much rather just put out proper, genuine content out in my channel and keep it clean from this bullshit. But as I share this information with one of my close friends who happens to closely follow fitness channels, including Ian's, he flipped out completely and he told me that he urged me to make this information public and expose Ian, because a lot of people actually rely on him to give out scientifically accurate information and basically just take his word as science. So as I thought about this a bit, and I also read through these comments after all these months, I couldn't help but get a little pissed off, thinking that this is the guy who is supposedly the face of scientific information on fitness on YouTube. It just flipped me out, you know. I don't care about petty arguments or fights, but I do care about science. And what this guy has shown with these actions here clearly disqualify him as a true man of science. So anyway, enough of that, let's get into the actual conversation. So Ian put up a video back in July titled, "Is the bench press necessary? Is the barbell bench press necessary?" Now, he did this video in response to a question he received from one of his followers who asked him that he's heard that the decline and incline press, once they're done, the flat bench becomes unnecessary. You don't need to do the flat bench. Is that true? So Ian responds in his video and he starts talking about how there are some EMG studies that suggest that the decline and incline press show more activation of the pec than the flat bench, but he doesn't have much confidence in EMG studies, and he goes on to talk in that line. He then says that he doesn't think that there'll be any significant difference with someone who's been trained dedicatedly on the flat bench or the decline or the incline bench. And if there's anybody who thinks otherwise, he invited them to put forth their points in the comments in the video. So considering his invitation and considering the fact that he's also a person who talks science like I do, I thought maybe, and you can level with me, so I thought maybe I would just go and put my point in there. And also the fact that I've actually discussed this point in one of my videos, and that I support that decline and incline combination would be all you would need and flat bench would not be necessary for muscle growth. I decided to go ahead and comment on this video, and this is what I said. And this is where it starts. So my comment was, "Ian, perhaps the EMG data doesn't provide adequate insight into the superiority of the decline plus incline over flat bench press, but a very clear and precise conclusion of the same can be derived using kinesiology and biomechanics. Kindly watch my video for my explanation on it," and I'll link my video. Start at 3 minutes 21 seconds to skip the irrelevant start plus introduction. So I link my video in which I basically talk that. It's called Muscle Masterclass Chest Training 101. I link that video. Ian's response is, "Give me a condensed argument here. I have a very strong knowledge of body mechanics and don't agree with that claim at all." Now before I start, let me just give you a quick understanding of chest anatomy so that you'll know what I'm going to say henceforth makes some sense to you. So the whole pec muscle, the pec major muscle, is made up of two subsections, 80% of which is called the sternocostal fibers, the lower pec region, in which the fibers run in a lower direction. And then 20% of the pec is actually what's called as the clavicular fibers, or the upper portion, in which the fibers run upward, right? Now, Now this is what I say in my response to decline bench superior to flat bench because number one, the shallow minus 15-degree angle created by the decline bench position angles the body or aligns the body to the line of movement in such a way that the movement is in line of maximum sternocostal fibers, thus activating more number of muscle fibers in the sternocostal region compared to the flat bench press. And I posted two more reasons. The second one being about the anterior delt and third one being about the tricep. And those didn't get approved. He didn't approve those two comments at all. And he just responded saying, that's obvious. That's like saying that the incline press hits the clavicular fibers harder than flat pressing. So he didn't approve the second and third comment, but his response to the first comment was that it's obvious that the decline press is superior for the sternocostal. It's the same as saying that the incline press is superior for the upper region. So I'm like, okay, I posted two additional comments to highlight the other points. Anyway, considering these advantages, it is clear that for maximum muscle fiber recruitment, for max tension across both subsections of the pec major, and thereby for max development, the decline and incline press are optimal, leaving the flat bench press subpar and completely unnecessary. His response is, your conclusion doesn't follow your premises. Yes, the decline press is going to hit the lower portion of the sternocostal fibers harder than the flat bench, and the incline is going to hit the clavicular harder. All that follows is that a variety of angles are beneficial. So the pec has two subsections, the lower and the upper. The decline is best for the lower, the incline is best for the upper. Then where does the flat bench come in? How is the flat bench beneficial? So all that follows is that a variety of angles are beneficial. So if the decline does the best job for the lower, if the incline does the best job for the upper, the middle is the flat is supposed to do for what? The middle, the inner, the under pec? What? This is a bro statement, bro. All angles are beneficial. If you understand anatomy as well as you say you do, which specific area does this target best? If one targets the lower best and one targets the upper best, then what does this do? As I have said, your point about the anterior delt is completely false. More often than not, the weakest link is going to be the tricep. So he doesn't approve my comment on the front delt, first of all. But we'll get into that later because as the comments unveil, you will understand why the argument goes in that direction. So anyway, I say that I would appreciate if you allow these two comments through as it would complete my answer. But don't leave my answer incomplete. Anyway, I don't care how you, I don't see how you can say my conclusion doesn't follow my premises. The reason I have provided clearly prove the superiority of the decline press over the flat press, which in turn answers clearly the question which to pick when optimum muscle gain is the goal. As for the tricep being the weakest link and not the anterior delt, I am surprised to hear that from you, Ian. The front delt, his response, and now guys just listen to this, okay? You got to check this out. The front delt is one of the most commonly overtrained and overdeveloped body parts. And someone who knows how to bench correctly can minimize its involvement anyway. Note this, okay? Remember this line. So to claim that it represents the weakest link on pressing is doubly bizarre. Did I miss something here? Okay, first part. The front delt is the most commonly overtrained and overdeveloped. Part 1. Part 2. The person who knows how to bench correctly can minimize his involvement. Part 3. So, the claim that is the weakest link is absurd. I'm surprised to hear my response. I'm surprised to read such comments from you, Ian. The first part of the statement, obviously true. But one's ability to minimize the involvement of a particular muscle will come nowhere close to being in a situation or nowhere close as significant as putting your body in a situation where the involvement will be inherently reduced automatically. And even then, how does one's ability to reduce the involvement of a muscle automatically make it not make it the weakest link? You know, all you can do is you simply manage to relatively reduce its impact. I'm surprised at this point. I was really surprised to hear this from him because he's a smart guy. And two statements he makes, and then the third conclusion is completely disconnected from the statement that he's made. It just doesn't make any freaking sense. His response, and note this very clearly, guys, because this is going to be an important point later on. You're surprised because you don't know what you're talking about. Classic Ian. But anyway, and then he quotes me, but one's ability to minimize the involvement of the anterior delt will nowhere come near close. He quotes that portion. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? He said, when did he ever say this? Please actually watch people press. The weakest link is usually lockout strength. We'll get into that point. In the discussion on that will come later on. I want to just take this into a proper structure. So let me go on to the next slide. We will get to that in a bit. Now this particular screenshot is a little jumbled. The comments are a little in a reverse direction. So we start with the one in the bottom. No, what you've demonstrated is that the decline press activates the lower portion of the pec more than the flat pressing. I agree with that. So he agrees that the decline works the lower pec more than the flat. Simply asserting that this makes the decline press unequivocally better is bizarre. In fact, I could do the same with the incline versus flat pressing. The flat pressing involves the lower portion of the pecs to a greater degree. So the flat pressing is unequivocally better. You won't accept that argumentation, neither do I accept yours. Okay. When we compare two exercises, we're comparing for the same muscle group, right? Same subsection. We are comparing the decline press versus the flat press for the sternocostal fibers. We are not comparing the sternocostal and the clavicular. He gives an analogy that compares one. It's like me saying, you know, the straight curl or the supinated curl would work the bicep brachii and the reverse curl would work the brachialis. And me trying to twist and turn and saying one is better than the other. We're not comparing two different subsections. We're not comparing two different muscles. We're comparing the same subsection of the same muscle and two exercises that work the same thing. You're making a completely bizarre comparison out of nothing. So my response is the conclusion that I'm implying is that the combination of the decline and the incline press would be superior to any other combination of any other or individual exercise alone. Basically, decline plus incline better than decline plus flat or flat plus incline or any other individual combination that you can make out of the whole thing. Because like I've said, like he has admitted as well, decline is best for lower, incline is best for upper. The comparison exists only between the decline and the flat for their effect on the sternocostal fibers. Out of the two, the decline wins hands down, and he agrees to this. That, along with the fact that after incorporating these two, the inclusion of the flat bench becomes unnecessary, thereby answering the question addressed by your video. What is the question? Is the flat bench necessary? If the decline press is the best for the lower, if the incline is best for the upper, where does the flat bench become necessary? This pretty much answers it, but he still doesn't see it. His response: the comparison exists only between he quotes me, the comparison exists only between the decline and flat for their effect on the sternocostal fibers. Out of the two, decline wins hands down. His response: you clearly missed the point of my analogy. I'll leave you to reread it. I've reread this thing over 100 times, literally. I still don't see what analogy I missed. It's up for you guys, it's available to you. Please, if any of you can give me some insight on what part of his analogy I missed, or whether his analogy even made any freaking sense, let me know. I would love to know. I reread it as many times as I could. I didn't find anything. After this, I realized we have a couple of missed comments here, and I started noticing one thing. I realized that he was trying to delete our conversation, our messages. And I kind of figured that this would probably go in the wrong direction because I know this guy, he blocks people and he says that he's been attacked and that. So just to be safe, just to cover my hide, I made sure to start taking screenshots. And I was taking them in a hurry because this guy was deleting them pronto. He was deleting them as fast as he could. So I had multiple tabs open and I was trying to get as many screenshots as possible. And in the whole, you know, in trying to do that really fast, I kind of goofed up in certain screenshots in ways that they ended up being posted halfway. So if you see some of the screenshots which I posted, like where the top corner is not in the top corner of the actual image, it's because of this. I was doing it in a rush. Anyway, so this whole thing goes on. It goes on to, and he starts saying that I'm losing the argument. He mentioned something about me losing the argument. So to that I respond politely, my dear friend. First of all, there is no question of losing, as this is merely a scientific discussion aimed at discovering and highlighting facts. There are no losers here, only winners. And I will actually win if you are right, because it will increase my knowledge, and vice versa if that would happen. And everyone reading this wins because it's an interesting discussion that has probably brought about many points that they may not be aware of yet. Guys who follow me, guys who follow you, are critical thinkers, guys who go into science. They are the ones who would appreciate such information and such conversations going on. They would learn from this. It's all a positive thing. So I seriously don't get why you approach everything with this winning or losing attitude, is what I politely ask him. His response: how ironic. You accuse me of having a winning or losing attitude despite the fact that you're the one who has shown yourself willing to misinterpret my views so as to make them easier to attack. Attack? My response: attack? How and when did I ever attack you or your statements? I merely answered each of your comments and cross questions at my reasoning. That's it. Guys, you can check out the comments and all this thing. Can you tell me, please, when did I ever attack this guy? Okay? Or show an inclination towards attacking him. If anything, you have attacked me with your statements such as you're surprised because you don't know what you're talking about. Notice, guys, he mentioned this. He basically told me that my knowledge is shit. I don't know anything. I don't know what I'm talking about. If anything, he's the one who's attacked, not me, right? You have conveniently deleted our entire discussion. This is what I wrote. And now you're accusing me of something I've not done. Is this going to end up with me being branded as an attacker? Certainly looks like it. Now this is when I start realizing that all these guys he's been blocking on his channel and claim them as attackers and guys who are trying to put him down. Initially I thought that these are the ones who are only coming in telling that he doesn't have a good physique and that's why they're attacking him. But now it's kind of the picture's starting to look a little more clear now. Moving on. So remember he mentioned something of the lines of a person who knows how to bench correctly or would be able to reduce the involvement of the front delts anyway, right? He said this, right? So I mentioned that somewhere in the missed comments, like they get missed on while I was trying to take the screenshots. Like I said, he was deleting them, so I probably missed out a few. But this is the next one I have available. He says, "You're a flagrant liar. You explicitly said that I claim that that one can decrease the involvement of the front delt by consciously thinking about it, which was a complete fabrication on your part." Okay. You then changed the subject to the strength of the front delt versus the strength of the pec at various angles, despite the fact that you knew full well that we are discussing weak points and bench pressing. We are discussing decline versus flat, but anyway. So my response is, let's start over here. Number one, you said that experienced lifters know how to minimize the involvement of the anterior delts. Is that correct? I said that the decline angle forces the body to reduce the involvement of the anterior delts. And I said that conscious reduction of the involvement of the front delts by the lifter will not nearly be as significant as the reduction that comes automatically with the decline position. So he says, holy shit, you just completely fabricated some made up position that I never said again. Did he not say that somebody who knows how to bench correctly will know how to reduce the involvement of the anterior delts anyway? Right? Did he not say this? He did, right? So I ask him and say, wait, did you not say, and I quote, someone who knows how to bench correctly can minimize its, in the bracket, anterior delts involvement anyway? At this point, I guess he probably realized that I have a copy or some reference where I've actually pasted his actual quote and that I have some proof that he said that. So immediately, from calling me a liar and saying that I made up a position out of nothing, next comment he says, yes, I did. Yes, I said that. I didn't say anything about conscious reduction, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about using correct form, obviously. I'm like, okay. So they are using correct form in a flat bench to reduce the involvement of the front delt. Agreed. But my point is that reduction there, how much ever it must be, is considerably less than what you would get by using correct form in the decline press. In both places, we aim to use correct form. Considering that the decline would allow for far greater reduction of the anterior delt due to internal shoulder rotation. Do you not agree? See this, now he's going to talk about correct form and technique. Whenever we compare two exercises, do you compare one exercise done with correct form and the other one done incorrectly? Hell no. You compare two exercises, assuming the form is correct, you compare both those exercises to find out the benefits of each of them, right? He's talking about doing the bench correctly. That's assumed, my friend. That is automatically assumed. We're talking about the bench press done correctly and the decline press done correctly. Seriously. At this point, I start to feel that this guy I'm talking to, like a fourth grader or something, or probably even lesser than that, is really sounding stupid, It's not funny anymore. It's kind of getting frustrating. Anyway, next comment. Okay, so they're using correct form on a flat bench. Yeah, I just say that. He says far greater reduction. No, I don't agree. He doesn't agree there's a far greater reduction. So then I have to literally go on and actually talk to him like I would talk to a goddamn toddler. So I say the decline press inherently puts the shoulder in an internally rotated position than the flat. Flat press inherently puts the shoulder in external rotation at 90 degrees. Now this can be reduced, but still not nearly as much that is inherent in the decline press. He quotes me on that last line and says, lol, nice contradiction there. The shoulder isn't going to be at 90 degrees if one benches correctly. Again, correctly. The assumption is that everyone's benching correctly. You're again talking, you don't have any points, so you just say the same thing again. Contradiction, where did I contradict myself? How did I contradict myself? Tell me. Yes, the shoulder isn't going to be at 90 degrees when you bench. That is precisely why I said you can reduce the external rotation a bit, but it won't compare to the reduction that comes automatically with the decline. I don't know how I mustered the patience to talk to this guy at that point, because it really sounded like it was late in the night for him and sleepy. But then again, if you look at the screenshot, it's like 2 a.m. and I'm talking to him, so at my time. So I could use that excuse, not him. He's in another time zone entirely, probably midday for him. This goes on to our second point that I addressed, saying that the anterior delts are the weakest link in any form of horizontal press. You said it isn't. To illustrate my point, I'm giving the example. Compare the anterior delt on various forms of pressing, ranging from the decline press all the way up to the seated overhead press. There is as you can see, as there's an increase in the angle of the bench, there is a corresponding shift in the line of resistance towards upward direction of the body and a progressively decreased amount of load that you can handle. Now, guys, I want you to think about this, okay? If you've ever done any form, probably you've done something from the decline angle all the way to the seated bench. Most of you have probably done that, right? Have you not noticed that as you've increased the angle of the bench, there's been a total reduction of the amount of weight you can handle? From the decline, you can handle the most weight in decline, then in the flat, then little less in the incline, and considerably less in the overhead press, seated overhead press. Is that correct? Even if you've not done the decline, you've probably seen the difference in the flat to the overhead, correct? As the angle increases, another thing that you've noticed is that even if you don't think about it from the point of muscle activation, you also know from the exercise. We are familiar that the decline press works the lower pec. We know that the flat bench also works the lower pec. We know that the incline works the upper pec. And then we know that the seated overhead press works the front delt. As you increase the angle, the shift moves upward. And as the shift moves upward, the load becomes lesser. Because there's a lesser involvement of the chest, stronger muscle, and more involvement of the weaker muscle, which is the front delt. How does he not get that? It's an obvious, and I say, how is that changing a subject? So he's like, it's an obvious change of subject because the weakest muscle involved in lift is not equal to the weakest link. The weakest muscle involved in the lat pull down is likely the rear delts, but they're obviously not the weakest link. So I question him. Okay, questions. What is the limiting factor in the basic chest press? Is it the pecs, the tris, or the anterior delts? I know it's the anterior delts. Anyway, which muscle is the weakest? Which is most likely to fatigue before any other? It's the anterior delt. And if the muscle that is all of the above is not the weakest link in the movement, then what is? He says, depends on the trainee, obviously. And then again, the weakest muscle in the lift is not necessarily the weakest link in the lift. Depends on the trainee. Who's talking like a bro now, bro? Anyway, the weakest link in a lift is the weakest muscle in the kinetic chain. That's what I say. The one which is most likely to give out before any other muscle in the kinetic chain. And that is the anterior delt. I was not referring to the individual strengths of the pecs, front delts, and tris by themselves, but their strength as a unit and part of the kinetic chain. Guys, where do you find yourself weakest in the chest press? In any form of horizontal pressing, it's at the bottom position because the movement is channelized from the chest and the anterior delts. In a movement, if there's power dissipation occurring at one position, it could very easily make you fail at another part of the lift. Ian, in the beginning of this discussion, talks about how the tricep lockout is a difficult part of the lift. But here's the thing, if majority of your power is being dissipated at the front delt, in the end, lockout will be difficult. Does not mean it's the triceps that are weak. Your triceps could pretty well handle that load. But it's just that when you're initiating the movement from the bottom, if you're losing a lot of power in the bottom, in the end, at the top, you will not be strong enough. You will suffer in the top. That is what's happening here. The weak link is the anterior delt. The power is being dissipated from that place, and that is why it is the weakest link. But anyway, so I write all of this, and again he gives the same bro answer. Again, it depends on the trainee. What do you say to that? You know, he bashes so many people for giving bro-like answers, and then he gives one himself. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Then I go ahead and respond to him very emphatically, and I say, this is the time when I get really pissed off, because I never expected this to come from the guy who was supposedly known as the science guy on YouTube. I never expected this. So I get a little pissed off and I say, anatomy doesn't depend on the trainee. Joint action doesn't depend on the trainee. Kinesiology doesn't depend on the trainee. And even considering the very same person in both movements using correct form, I mentioned again, so he doesn't use that again, he or she will experience lesser involvement of the front delt in the decline position compared to the flat. So no, it does not depend on the trainee. I was really pissed at this point. His answer, we are not discussing anatomy or joint action, huh? We are discussing anatomy and joint action. Anyway, we're discussing weak points in benching. Remember the discussion origination. It's decline versus flat. But anyway, which obviously, we're discussing weak points in benching which obviously vary. To deny this is to deny differences in bone structure and muscle strength, which is patently absurd. You know what? Your argument is patently absurd. You know why? Differences in bones, you could have a 10-foot long bone or a 2-foot long bone. As long as you're a Homo sapien with the anatomy of a Homo sapien, your pecs will always perform horizontal adduction. It's going to be your biceps that perform elbow flexion, not your glutes. You don't use your glutes for elbow flexion. No matter what, how big your bone structure, how small your bone structure is. Kinesiology and joint action remains the same. You know, and talking about muscle strength, initially he's talking about the individual strength. I wasn't. But even then, even if you're comparing muscle strength, are you trying to say that a person could be stronger in the anterior delts or could be weaker in their triceps? That is why the tricep would be the weak link? Is that what you're trying to say? In that case, think about this. Consider the function, any movement that does purely works the front delt and purely works the tricep. The front raise and the tricep extension. In no way possible, no matter how horrible an imbalance you have, there is no way that you could actually front raise a weight more than you can do tricep extensions. There's no way, man. There's no way you could do that. Go ahead and find out. He's starting to sound really absurd right now. Really, really stupid. Now, and then finally he says, now given that you've demonstrated yourself to be dogmatic in your views, funny thing though, because that's what people would call him when he would talk about science. Anyway, dogmatic in your view, my refutations of your claims have yielded no result. I am going to select to no longer respond to your comments. And then he opts out of the discussion. Awesome, isn't it? I tried responding, saying that, by the way, since A, you failed to address the other points I put forth, point 1 and point 3, in my original comment, way back then, and B, since you've decided to opt out of the debate without properly explaining why I'm wrong, and when I say that the decline press is superior to the flat, and that the flat bench is unnecessary for muscle building, does that mean I quote-unquote win? But I couldn't post the comment because I was blocked. And he blocked me after that, and then the conversation ended there. That was the end of our discussion, our debate. Anyway, why did I share all this information with you guys? Why? What is my motive? See, Ian represents science. He's the guy who represents science apparently on YouTube. And what he has demonstrated here clearly shows that he's not a true man of science. Science is all about acquiring information and assimilating all the evidence that's made available to you and coming up with a conclusion that gives you proper direction. And that conclusion could completely shatter what you believe right now, but it still allows you, if you have a scientific mindset, you will accept it instead of try to, show your ego and be so egoistic and arrogant to kind of like, to completely avoid it. And if you do that, that makes you a bro, and that is exactly what he did. So Ian, I'm sorry to say, you're just as much a bro as the guys you've been calling out. So anyway, guys, I don't want to leave you all with this negative notion, so here's the takeaway message I have for you all. You see, right now the YouTube fitness community is divided into, two factions. You've got the bros and you've got the science guys. And each of these have their own following, their own dedicated following, people who respect what they say and who follow them like anything. And to all of them, this is my message, this is my piece of advice. No matter what you're getting, who you're getting information from, however trusted he may be, you have guys like Ian who's looked at as this, this source of unbiased scientific information, and you rely on them so much. No matter who you're following, I invite you, I encourage you all to employ critical thinking and think and analyze things for yourself. No matter who it's coming from, it could be from the guy you respect the most, or who has a track record of putting out the most accurate information. Always make sure that you do your own research. Always make sure that you think critically and you're able to analyze your advice from a neutral perspective and not with your bias, so that you don't miss out any fallacies that they may put forth. And more than anything else, question, ask why. Question Ian, question Lane, question Jason Blaha, question the bros, question me. At the end of the day, it's up to you to think critically and to ask the question why. And if you don't get an answer to that, or you don't get a convincing answer, you know exactly what's going wrong. So that's it, guys. I'm going to sign off right now. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And that's about it, folks. See you next time.